Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sharing with Shellshock. I am your host, ShellshockPrime, and tonight we are doing a new episode, video game compilations and collections, where we talk about our favorite games that were a part of collections and stuff, and whatnot. So we have a lot to talk about today. But first, let's introduce our guests. Joining me first, our returning guest, OneOneTwo. Hi, OneOneTwo.
Hey, Shell, how you doing?
Doing good. Good to have you back.
Yes, I've most of the retro games I've played have been through compilations and collections, so I definitely have a lot to say about this topic, and I'm happy to be here.
Yep. ArcadeBear, this is your first time here. Welcome.
Hi. Yeah, no, it's good to be here, and I've certainly been around the block as far as video game compilations, collections, arcade collections, you name it.
Yep. Welcome, and also, good to have you, Azran, another first-time guest.
I got a pile of collections right here, Shellshock. Let's do this.
And Okami, another returning guest. Good to have you back, OkamiHylia.
Hello. Thanks for having me tonight.
Yep. No problem. Welcome, everyone. And welcome everybody that's in chat right now. Hope you are all having a good Sunday night. It's Sunday, as of this recording, March 10th, 2024. And right now, we are here to talk about video game compilations. But first, let's talk about what type of content do you guys do, and what do you do in regards to just your internet presence and all that stuff. OneOneTwo, you go first.
Well, I don't stream as much anymore, but maybe one day I will stream again. Follow me. It's twitch.tv/OneOneTwo_112. You type it out with the letters first and then numbers. Most of the time, you can find me on the r/Megaman subreddit in Discord. So that's reddit.com/r/Megaman or discord.gg/Megaman.
Yep.
You'll generally find me there.
Yep. What about you, ArcadeBear?
I'm kind of all over the map. It used to be I would stream Switch games and PS4 games because I had them up in my room. Now I'm more PC sort of a thing, but like my heart will always belong to retro gaming. So Nintendo, Super Nintendo. I never really had a Genesis or any really Sega console, so I'm a little bit behind the times on that. But you know, I'm open.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Azran?
Well, I do stream some Nintendo childhood favorites, as well as some underrepresented indie gems. But part of my variety includes this here piano right here, which I play like at least once a month.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but my content extends to Spotify, where there's a couple instrumental albums. And right now, the biggest thing is that I'm gearing up for a panel at PAX East.
Yes. And so are you, OneOneTwo. I know you are as well.
I'm doing the same, yeah. Yeah, I'm doing the same.
Yep. And
But not the same as each other.
Not the same as each other, yep.
Yeah, not the same panel, two different panels.
Yep. But I'm happy for the both of you. All right, Okami.
I think yours is on the same day, though, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, mine yours ends, and then mine's 2 hours later.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, Okami, what type of content do you do?
I tend to do a strange mix of cozy and wholesome games, particularly indie ones. But then we also tend to do visual novels and, of course, horror games. So a little bit of a weird mix. Oh, and typically Genshin Impact as well.
All right. Sounds good. All right. So let's get started with the beginning. So, like, since we were talking about video game compilations and collections, let's talk about what is your first video game collection, compilation, whatever you call it? What is your first one? OneOneTwo, we'll go with you first.
So I suspect that this is going to be a somewhat common one, although mine is with a little bit of a twist. If I remember correctly, my first video game collection was Super Mario All-Stars, but it wasn't the SNES version. It was actually the re-release on the Wii, which is just the SNES version, but regardless. I remember it pretty fondly. That was one of my introductions to video games. In terms of like on my own hardware, because I remember I played through sort of at other people's houses for a long time. The first video game I played was Mario 64, and I remember
Repeat that, please. You're cutting out.
really got to experience. I'm not the only one who's gonna have this answer, but the first collection I experienced was definitely Super Mario All Stars, and I think it's good. I think it's a decent update to the original 3 games. And of course, there's the Super Mario World version on the SNES as well that includes Super Mario World. But
Yes.
they're good representations of 1, Lost Levels 2 and 3. I will say that the physics in Mario 1 are kind of weird and not the best implemented. That is probably the biggest criticism I have. It feels like you just don't have the same momentum as in Mario 1, which makes it very hard in Lost Levels because those levels were not designed like that.
Yep.
In fact, I actually had a harder time on the SNES version that I ended up having later when I played the original NES version via the Virtual Console. So, yeah, my first was Super Mario All Stars. I thought it was pretty good.
All right. Now, what about you, ArcadeBear?
Ooh, okay, so I could take this answer a few different ways. I remember on the Nintendo, it technically wasn't a compilation because they shouldn't have existed, but some friends of mine did have the cartridge where it was like 250 games in one. But of those 250 games, it was like maybe, Mario 1 with different sort of hacks in it. And there would be like 20 different hacks of the same Mario 1 game or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Or, like a lot of just old Nintendo games where it was collectively maybe 25 different games, but then just so many different hacks of all of those games or starting levels or something like that. Kind of like with the Nintendo Switch Online, where like you can play the special versions of older Nintendo games because they give you like boosts or start you in different locations or with more items or something like that.
Yeah.
So technically, that's my first compilation. I also had the Action 52 cartridge.
Oh, wow.
If anybody remembers what that is or knows what that is, my parents saw it on like the Home Shopping Network, and they're like, "Oh, well, our son loves video games. Let's get him 52 games in one." And there is not 52 games in that compilation. There's more like 30, and the rest don't work, and none of them are good.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Wow.
But also, like OneOneTwo said, yeah, for sure. I think probably the actual legit compilation that I remember the most is I had Mario All Stars on the Super Nintendo.
Yep.
Yeah.
I swear, if everyone's answer is Mario All Stars, I'm going to be quite upset.
Well, we'll see what happens.
I swear mine isn't.
All right. Well.
Okay.
Well,
that makes me feel better.
Well, Azran, your turn.
So about Super Mario All Stars for the Nintendo Wii.
You're kidding me.
I'm sorry. I'm not kidding. When I grew up, my first console that my mom introduced me to was the GameCube, and I wasn't buying my own games at the time. I don't think I picked up any compilations on the GameCube in memory. And then, she knew I liked Mario, and then saw this around the 25th anniversary. So this was my introduction to 2D Mario.
Yep.
Or at least the classic ones. But I got this 2-pack box because it was the 25th anniversary. So let me introduce you to the soundtrack selection CD that came with it, and it's got this photo of the NES with Mario Brothers on the front.
Nice. And
I burned this onto my phone because this was like the first time I could listen to video game music outside of the game itself. It's because I could burn this CD onto iTunes back when I was, using that regularly.
Yep. See, the thing is, Mario All Stars is a really good way to start, but I'll say when I get to myself, it's actually not that. But Okami, you're next.
My God.
So I was kind of in a similar case where I wasn't able to really get any compilations up until like the Wii because I didn't have my own money and I kind of had to pray that I got what I asked for.
Mm-hmm.
But going off of I'm hoping it's correct because I don't remember anything before it, but it was the Kirby Dream Collection for the Wii, which I absolutely loved because it came with the booklet, it came with the CD, and then for people who like still remember Club Nintendo when it was a thing, they also had the Dream Collection coin on there. So I'm so glad I had saved up points because that was like one of my last purchases, I think, before they closed up shop.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved the Dream Collection, especially because it's got one of my all-time favorite Kirby's in there, Kirby 64, and then all the special challenges with Magalore, who is just my favorite Kirby character, period.
Mm-hmm.
Which just reminded me of Return to Dreamland, which I don't speedrun, but I have ran it for charity events, but I just love Kirby.
Yep. Yeah, because for me, like, while I was aware of Super Mario All-Stars, that was not the first one that I played, or rather owned, for that matter. The first one that I've actually owned was on the Sega Saturn, and that is Sonic Jam, which unfortunately I don't have it anymore.
Oh.
So Sonic Jam is how you play Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Sonic and Knuckles on the Sega Saturn. And the reason Sega made that compilation, that collection in general, is because in Japan, Sonic was not popular over there. Sonic was never popular in Japan. In fact, because Sega Saturn in Japan was popular, but when Knights released, there were some people in Japan who were like, "Who's Sonic? And why is this team named Sonic Team?" Because Sonic Team were the developers of Nights into Dreams for Saturn. So they took it upon themselves to make a Sonic collection for the Saturn, which also has a special bonus called Sonic World, which was the first actual taste of Sonic in 3D. It was actually a precursor to what would become the first Sonic Adventure. And that right there was my first collection that I've ever owned. And there have been other collections that I've bought over the years, but I did play Mario All-Stars afterwards, believe it or not, when my brother used to be admitted to the hospital because of asthma, and they had video games there for kids to play. And one of the games was Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World with the Mario World where Luigi had the different sprites and the physics. But again, just to make you feel better, OneOneTwo, that wasn't my first. It was Sonic.
Thank God. Although I will point out that I am noticing a bit of a theme with our answers, considering all five of us answered a platforming compilation.
Yes.
And three of them were the same platforming compilation.
But I will comment real quick that Action 52, that threw me off because I was not thinking that was going to be brought up today, but thank you for that.
It's a compilation. It counts.
But thank you for that. Yes. So yeah. But yeah, it's like
I also would like to point out, by the way, that it's pretty absurd that Kirby's Dream Collection was a better compilation for the 20th anniversary than Super Mario All-Stars. Like, you would think Mario, Nintendo's biggest icon, would have this grand celebration I think that was the 20th anniversary, right? Or was that 25th?
it was the 20th. Yeah, it was 20.
Or it was the 20th. Okay, well, my point is that the fact that Kirby had a better compilation than Mario for the 20th anniversary says a lot. Because Kirby's Dream Collection, I agree, OkamiHylia was awesome. Like I was not expecting Kirby 64 to be there, and because that's an N64 game, and the fact that it is superb. Like, that is a great collection.
Yep.
I don't know if it's a hot take, but I think it was better than the Zelda one. And like, some people might know me just from the name. I'm hardcore Zelda. I live and breathe Zelda. So I honestly thought the Dream Collection was even better than what they did for Zelda, to be honest.
The GameCube one, right?
Yeah.
Because I remember that I wanted it, but I missed it because you want to know why? Because by the time that I subscribed, they weren't giving it out. They gave it out a certain window, and I was nowhere near the window where my subscription for Nintendo Power was about to run out. So, unfortunately, I missed it.
I remember that the Zelda collection, didn't that not have Link to the Past, despite having, like, 1 and 2 and Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask?
If I remember correctly, yeah.
That's
hilarious.
That's because of the fact that A Link to the Past was on the Game Boy Advance at the time. So I guess because
Four Swords, yeah, true.
because they wanted people to buy the Game Boy Advance version. But yeah. So the next thing we'll talk about is, how would you recommend a video game collection or compilation to someone? Like, so if someone wanted to buy like different collections, how would you recommend it? Like, let's start with you, ArcadeBear. How would you recommend a collection to someone?
I guess it depends on what they want to play or what I know that they like to play, because like I can think of a bunch of different collections, and I'm sure like everybody has different responses to this. I'm thinking right now, because I never really got to play a lot of Genesis games or Sega games or anything like that.
Yeah.
The Sega Genesis collections that they've put out, while 90% of the time they have like a lot of the same games on them, you can get some interesting gems as well. Like I'm a pretty big RPG nerd, so one of the Sega collections has Phantasy Star 4 on it. That to me is like a top tier Sega Genesis collection, right?
Yes.
On top of the fact that it has like most of the Sonic games too, so you're definitely getting just your money's worth right there. But yeah, like the fact that there's like a 50-hour RPG, or well, you know, depending on how much you like to grind, I'm a big grinder.
Yep.
Yeah, you can get a lot of money out of that collection. So it really does depend on what haven't they played, what are they looking for, you know, because every collection that kind of exists, and I know you're a big fan of like brawlers, so Capcom came out with the brawler collection, right?
Yep.
Things like that. Yeah, it's going to depend on the person that I'm speaking with and what kind of games that I know that they played versus what haven't they.
Yeah. All right, that's fair. Now, what about you, Azran?
I think a lot of it actually boils down to some of the extra contents that you get with the game, because a lot of collections like to do that, whether it's behind the scenes things or extra modes or art, music, what have you. The reason that Kirby's 20th collection holds up so well even today is because of stuff that's in this game that does not exist elsewhere. I did a Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe playthrough, and I actually went back to this disc to cover some of the stuff that didn't make the cut for Switch.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is stuff that doesn't make the cut for Switch. Those extra challenge stages that OkamiHylia mentioned, they're kind of locked in here. And so is the little history section where Kirby gets to walk down a timeline, and it's like, remember when this person was elected president and this was just a thing that was printed in a Nintendo published game, and we're like, whoa, they'd never do that today.
No, they would not.
It's such a silly little detail that makes you feel old simultaneously. But like, it's just really cute watching him like just go through and being like, guess how old you are now.
Yep.
I love that timeline. I agree.
Yeah, that timeline was amazing.
Yeah. So I would say that if you're already familiar with the franchise, and then they decide to add these little tidbits that help fill out what you may or may not have seen in that franchise before, then that's going to be a big push. Kirby's Dream Collection was an easy thing for me, because not only was I too young to have experienced these games when they came out, so they were all new Kirby games to me, but they also had the extra stuff that tied back to the modern game. And we've got some other collections that I plan to address later during the questions that have a startling number of new features that make it worth a revisit.
Yeah.
So that's the number one thing for me, I'd say. Okay.
So, Okami, how would you recommend a video game collection or compilation to someone?
So, kind of similar points to what Azran brought up with there's gotta be like, I would recommend it if there's extra content that we haven't seen before. Quality of life updates, especially. You know, like say, like I know Persona 3 is not in the compilation, but like just as an example of quality of life improvements to a game, where like say, the art style might have been updated, the quality of life gameplay options might have been updated, or just like even if it's just a port that's like extremely faithful and it doesn't have all that, even if it has like just a little, if you've never played it before, but I know it's a genre that you like, I just be like, just pick up the collection. I'm like, chances are you know you're probably gonna like it.
All right. That's actually a fair answer as well. What about you, OneOneTwo?
So I use the exact same tactics that everyone else has stated thus far. So this is a bit of a difficult question to answer, but the tactic that I use that has not been brought up yet is I like to use price points, because odds are, especially if the collection is of older games, it is going to be cheaper to pick up the games on the collection than it is to get them individually, on top of the fact that there's often better quality of life features and stuff that you can't find elsewhere. And I can't remember the third point, but so I try to use price, because oftentimes it is just cheaper to get it that way. Now the common response to that is, why not just emulate it? That's where I get into the other arguments that were said. I do also want to use a very specific set of compilations, and that is the Ace Attorney collections. I got into Ace Attorney through the trilogy and through the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles and then the Apollo Justice trilogy. And part of the reason for that was because of the price, and I knew that it would be cheaper to pick those all up on a console and wait for the collection. Yes, I love Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And yeah, the Apollo Justice as well.
Yep.
So I waited, for example, for Apollo Justice Ace Attorney Trilogy, I actually waited for the trilogy, even though I was basically caught up to playing every game besides 4, 5, and 6, because I knew it would be cheaper and I knew it would be easier to play on the Switch.
Yep.
So I often use that as my tactic. And by the way, all the Ace Attorney collections are fantastic. They do a very good job of, for the most part, keeping the games faithful to the original while also updating them for a modern audience, especially in the Apollo Justice trilogy. The animation studio is great. That is just fun to mess around with.
Yes.
I will say that was my first exposure to Ace Attorney 2 was through the HD trilogy. And I'm kicking myself because I completely streamed through the first trilogy. And obviously it got to the point where Apollo Justice was next, but I was like, do I sit here and wait for them to possibly maybe announce this?
Mm-hmm.
Which I just ended up emulating it just for streaming purposes.
Yep.
And then I got to Ace Attorney Investigations 1 and 2, which, you know, I'm still praying they get an official release over here as well, and not the fan translations are great. But I would honestly throw money at Capcom if they would just honestly bring it over here just to support it. And I'm currently going through the Great Ace Attorney 2 because again, the animations in that are great. I just love some of the reactions. Oh gosh, it's amazing, honestly. I can't wait to pick up the Apollo Justice trilogy, but yeah, I really love the fact that it seems like we're getting so, and especially just because now that the 3DS, now getting 3DS games is going to basically skyrocket at this point.
That's
Yes.
true.
Yeah. So
Bringing up Ace Attorney,
go ahead.
I do also want to point out that very suspiciously, during an interview for the Apollo Justice trilogy, Capcom said, it was one of the senior devs, said that they were, quote, aware of the demand for the Investigations duology,
Good.
which to me says be patient and it's coming. Like, obviously I have no hard confirmation of that, but that is a very suspiciously specific answer. And I don't think they would say that if they weren't planning something.
Yeah. That's what
I might be biased, but just I love Edgeworth. He's my favorite character. I'm like,
Yes,
please let more
same.
people play it.
because
see, it's another beautiful thing about compilations when a region gets a game that it did not previously get as a part of one. Another really recent example of this is another code where we got the Wii game.
this is really good. I still have to play this, but this is good so far, what I've seen. But what you said about the whole please be patient, not the first time I heard about that OneOneTwo, because they said that about another collection, and that's this one. Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. Because people were asking for these games, and then, like, we waited, we were patient, and we got them. So,
The funniest thing about Battle Network is that one was delayed primarily due to online, because apparently they had a lot of difficulty implementing that, which that is completely fair. I can't imagine how hard it is to add online to GBA games.
Yeah.
And the pandemic only made that worse. But yeah, I think being patient was absolutely the right call, because Battle Network Legacy Collection is, at least for single player, I would argue it's the definitive way to play the games. Multiplayer, maybe not, because it's a little shaky. I would still recommend Tango for that, but for single player, absolutely.
Yep. And now that brings me to my own answer to this question. So how I would recommend a collection or compilation just depends on what they like. But let's say if somebody wants to cash in on nostalgia because they're a huge fan of classic anime or cartoons or whatever. In this case, there's a popular cartoon that had a collection not too long ago, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection. Of course, I'm using this as an excuse to mention this. But here's the thing. So there are people who love Ninja Turtles, whether it was the 87 series or any subsequent series that came afterwards, or the comics. But the games were classics. Konami made a ton of classic Ninja Turtles games within a span of 1989 to 1993 that were represented of the 87 series. So how I would recommend a collection like this is, do you love Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s and 90s? Do you love Ninja Turtles? Do you love beat-em-ups? Then this is the collection that I recommend you. Granted, it's usually costs $40, but it goes on sale all the time. So if you don't feel like paying $40 for this collection, but you want to wait for a sale, do so. A collection like this would be worth your time. But what if you don't like beat-em-ups, might you ask? Well, what if I like fighting games instead? Well, I have some suggestions for you too. So, we'll start by going to two different compilations. Both are from Capcom. So
they're Cap compilations.
Yes. So to start things off.
I don't think I used that yet.
Oh my God! I'm glad that you actually brought up that term, because, so we have Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, and this was actually signed by Yoshinori Ono. I had him sign it at Comic-Con in 2018, and Capcom Fighting Collection. So if you want to get started in fighting games, they're both very cheap to get. And Capcom does sales at least once a month, whether physically or digitally. So I recommend that as well.
Which one of those has Street Fighter Alpha 3?
This one.
30th.
The 30th Anniversary Collection. This one has Street Fighter Alpha 3. This one, on the other hand, this one has the Darkstalkers series. It has the obscure ones, like Darkstalkers. It has Cyberbots. Really good fighting games. Red Earth. Yeah. Which was never before released on a console up until this point. So very good collection. And as you said in chat, ArcadeBear, the Disney Afternoon Collection, that's another good one. But
I think Capcom's having a sale right now on Steam too, so that might actually be perfect timing that you brought that up.
They do have a sale on Steam that I believe is until March 21st. So as of this recording right now. So
also, ArcadeBear, to point out, Street Fighter Alpha 3 is also in Capcom Arcade Second Stadium.
Yes.
Which is another collection.
Yeah, the Capcom Arcade Stadium games are absolutely incredible because they have a lot of selection of arcade games. But let's talk about a different collection that I want to bring up. It's more of a compilation of two games that people have been requesting for years, and then we finally got it after much delays for a lot of worldwide stuff that happened. But when we finally got it, it absolutely delivered. The Advance Wars collection. You want to try out something that hasn't been re-released in a long time until now, I recommend this one. So, but the main thing is, it just depends on what you like. It just depends on the type of games you're interested in. But that's just my answer to that question. So I basically was just showing off what type of games I would probably recommend. But of course, if you like Mario, then of course there is something I do want to bring up. if you could somehow find Super Mario 3D All-Stars, good luck, because you can't find this anymore. But
Oh god, it's like trying to find a kidney.
yes. But yeah. So let's move on to the next thing. Let's talk about our favorite compilations and collections and what makes everything worth. Actually, let's split this up real quick. Let's do the favorite collections first, and then we'll do the what makes a collection worth it last. So, Okami, we'll start with you. No, actually, no. We'll start with Azran. Okami, you'll start with the next one afterwards, if that's okay. So
Yeah, no, I'm okay with that, because, oh man, I can't come up with answers that quick.
okay, so Azran, top, like, up to 5 video game collections that you say are the best.
Okay. I ranted about this a few minutes ago, so I'm just gonna say it would be lumped in my top 5, the Kirby collection on Wii.
Yep.
Because it does a lot right. But I won't go on too much about it. Here's that booklet, by the way.
Oh, that's a very sweet book.
And there was another CD inside that I could burn to my phone for casual listening.
Yep.
Had a couple remixes in there and orchestra stuff. It was great.
Yep.
Definitely upper echelon for me, and I believe Shellshock is playing this now, the Collection of Mana.
I am actually playing. Yeah, because I played through the first one, the Final Fantasy Adventure, and that's a fantastic game.
I still need to get. I own that collection and I have not started it yet. Thanks for reminding me. I need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my recommendation on this one is, like, if you want to see an early example of an action RPG, where, you know, it's not really turn-based, you're just on a cooldown system for your attacks, and there's really solid design work, and the music is phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, and the great thing about this collection was that they timed it so that this was another game where we got a region localized thing for the first time. The third game, Trials of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3,
Yes.
was put in English for the first time on this disc officially. And so you could play this, you could play it on the Collection of Mana, and then shortly afterwards a 3D remake of Trials of Mana came out, and it was better than the Secret of Mana 3D remake was. So I had to, because there's 6 characters that you can play as, and your party caps at 3, I did 3 on the original, and then 3 in the 3D remake.
Yep.
To get the full experience. Another this is where I was saying the extra features really shine through. This is Atari 50, and none of the games are particularly amazing on their own because of the test of time, but for what they were, like, this is such a big piece of history, and that's something I love about compilations, is that you can get a very nice history lesson for a decent price point. So this goes way back, and if you want, you can go through this whole timeline where they organize the major events of Atari. They have some developer commentary, but if you don't want any of that, you can just jump into the 50 games that are there without having to search for them when they came out. And there's even some unreleased stuff on here, like prototypes that never made it to market.
Yeah.
That I did not know.
I have a question. Does it have ET?
Did Atari make that?
They did,
Oh.
but
Did they?
they did, but I don't know how likely we're ever going to see that game re-released. Even though it
I
does,
was gonna say, don't you need to go through Universal for that?
that's
I
an,
can't
Oh.
I can't give an honest answer to that question because I only got as far as the arcade era so far in my time with the game.
Yep.
Even there was some surprisingly fun stuff. And I think that's all the ones I have major comments on.
all right. Okami?
So, my top ones, obviously Kirby Dream Collection, but I don't just want to repeat myself on that. So a big one for me is the Kingdom Hearts All-in-One collection.
Oh, yes.
Because growing up with Kingdom Hearts from the first game, I'm just gonna say it really sucked having all these games come out one after another on all different systems. Because I rarely knew a person that owned every single system these games came out on. I was one of those kids that when Kingdom Hearts 2 dropped, the funny thing was I had a GBA. I had no idea that Chain of Memories was ever a thing.
Yep.
So I open up Kingdom Hearts 2 and I'm like, where's Sora? Who's this kid? I was very confused. And obviously Birth by Sleep being, I think it was the Vita originally. I didn't know a ton of people with the Vita. So getting into Kingdom Hearts now is so much easier because of the collection. Whereas back in the day, there were chances you were probably going to be lost in between releases, but just because you didn't have the console for it, which never made sense to me. Spyro Reignited is another one. A lot of that is up to nostalgia for me. Because that was like my favorite game on the PlayStation, and I just wish Banjo-Kazooie had something similar. I pray the day will happen one day, but I doubt it. Obviously the Ace Attorney trilogy, and then but I feel like I'm repeating a lot of these. The Zero Escape collection, I know it technically doesn't have the whole trilogy, it's just the first two. But that's how I got into this. That's how I got into Zero Escape. And I could talk about that collection for like hours, and I could talk about Zero Escape in general for hours, but I won't. I will heavily restrain myself. But it contains the first two games, and I definitely recommend picking those up if you ever wanted to get into the franchise, because it's just the easiest way to do so. Although you do miss some features that were, because it was a game made with the DS in mind, so there's some features that didn't translate as well. But for my final one, I would say the BioShock collection, since that was my first. That was personally my first introduction to BioShock, because when it originally was out, I was too chicken to get that far into the game. And then I love horror now. I just love horror so much. And then I was just like old enough to the point where I wasn't afraid to play it anymore. I played the first two. I never played Infinite yet, but I loved the first two.
Yeah, I still gotta do 2 in Infinite. But BioShock is a really good game. I'll give you that one as well. Really good compilation so far.
Forgot about the Nonary games, but those were on Game Pass for a while. Unfortunately, not right this second. They removed it.
They do go on sale a lot too, from what I've seen. But yeah, if you love escape room games, please go play the Nonary games. They're so good. Please.
Yep. All right. What about you, OneOneTwo?
I am going to be incredible.
Oh, you're cutting out.
Cutting out.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all of the Mega Man Legacy collections.
So
what a shocker!
So all the Mega Man Legacy
collections.
Okay.
More than 5. Yeah, I know that there's more than 5 of them technically, but point being, all of them are fantastic. And as a moderator of the Mega Man subreddit, I credit them with being the single greatest influence as for why Mega Man exists right now. Like, after Mega Man's existence in Smash got revealed, that got Capcom thinking as to whether or not they should bring the series back. And then Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 selling gangbusters, like over 1 million units, and being one of the best-selling games in the series. That, I think, was the main reason why Mega Man isn't like completely dead right now. And I know people have varying opinions as to the state of the franchise, but I do genuinely think that is the reason why Mega Man is in existence.
Yes.
Like at this very moment. And if I had to give one of them that was the best, I still think that Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection has not been topped due to its addition of Save Assist, which allows you to basically have infinite lives while not decreasing the difficulty of the game. That makes the game a lot more fun, and it allows people who are newer to the franchise to not have as hard of a time getting into a game that is quite hard and has difficult enemy patterns, while also simultaneously not making the game necessarily too easy, since the level layout themselves are the same. That was not changed, but it brings the game up to a more modern standard. Now, granted, there is an easier mode. I think it's called Casual Scenario, and I do recommend using that for people who are completely new to like that type of 2D action platformer, and it's a great feature. I think I think the easier difficulty modes is part of the reason why Mega Man has reached a broader audience now than it has ever before.
Yes.
Battle Network Legacy Collection also did a great job with this with Buster Max, which multiplies your Mega Buster power by 100 and makes grinding for those 1% drop chips so much less annoying. That lowered my playtime by at least like 5 to 10 hours on like multiple games. Thank God.
Yep.
And Legacy Collection 1 and 2 and X Legacy Collection 1 and 2 also had great new features in order to allow people to get into the games easier. Although, unfortunately, I do think X Legacy Collection 1 has some pretty questionable input lag, which is why I think it's the worst one. Unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know that Legacy Collection 1 definitely had some input lag issues, although I feel like when I'm playing it on Switch, it just feels so natural to me. It feels about as one-to-one as it can be in comparison to like other platforms. Because when I tried the Legacy Collection 1 on 3DS, I've definitely felt some input lag there.
I played it on 3DS and it was so
X
small.
Legacy Collection.
Yep.
X Legacy Collection 1, I think, was the one that suffered the most from input lag, and it wasn't even on Switch, because I agree.
You might want to repeat. You might want to beat the last thing because you're cutting out 112. Everything okay, 112?
Oh, I apologize.
It's fine.
Hang on.
Okay.
Am I back?
You're good. You're good.
Okay. I said that X Legacy Collection 1 suffered the most from this, in my opinion, because, especially on PS4 and Xbox One, it was pretty brutal.
Yep.
And it was less bad on Switch, from what I remember.
Yeah.
Or PC.
Yeah, I played it on Switch and it ran fine too. So, Arcade Bear, your turn.
Highly recommend Action 52. Can't say enough good things about it. So does the mini SNES and the mini NES and the mini Genesis, like, do those count as compilations?
Yes.
Because though they're really difficult to find, and I don't know what they would probably run you on eBay or Kijiji or Craigslist or anything like that. You know, like, those are actually fairly good compilations. There's a lot of gems within those. Are they top 5 though for me? Probably not. Maybe the Super Nintendo, but that's just because I grew up with the Super Nintendo. So
I should have had that one in my top 5. I forgot it.
it's got Final Fantasy 3/6, technically, like one of the best RPGs ever made in the late 90s. So and Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2, like, fantastic compilation. Just good luck finding it. Somebody mentioned earlier the Castlevania Advance collection in chat.
Yeah.
I would also say the Castlevania Renaissance collection, because that's the one that has Symphony of the Night, which is, you know, as most people probably know, like, the thing that put Metroidvanias on them on you know, in everybody's
On the map.
yeah.
Yeah.
It brought that game to the forefront and that style of game, even though Metroid did it beforehand. You know, a Metroid is basically a Metroidvania, just without the leveling up. You're just getting the items and you go from room to room to solve the puzzles. But yeah, Castlevania Renaissance Collection. Contra, the collection, kind of holds a soft spot for me. I grew up with Contra on the NES. You also mentioned the TMNT collection.
Yes.
That's pretty freaking solid. Yeah, there's a lot of top tier collections, and I hate to say that the majority of them are mostly just because of games that I remember from what consoles I played growing up. But the good thing about some of these collections is that they contain, you know, games from consoles that you might not have grown up with.
Mm-hmm.
Again, didn't grow up with Sega or Genesis, but both the Contra and the TMNT collections have games that were unique to those consoles.
Yep.
And I'd say that those are solid pickups if you can find them.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because like I'm going to talk about the TMNT collection again, because to me this is the collection of my dreams. I've been wanting a collection like this for so long, and then I remember when Nintendo it was not even in a Nintendo broadcast, it was actually on a PlayStation broadcast, like in one of their state of plays. this popped up on there, and I would have never expected Sony to be the one pushing this, and yet this sold more on a Nintendo platform than on a PlayStation platform. Mainly because of the fact that, to me, since childhood, Nintendo and Ninja Turtles go hand in hand with each other. Because when Turtle Mania came around back in the late 80s, the NES was the popular console. And the first NES Ninja Turtles game, the one where you have to, they had a level where you swim in a dam, that one is the best-selling NES game outside of Japan that was not made by Nintendo.
Jeez.
So in Japan, that would be Dragon Quest III.
Well, that stands to reason, actually.
Yep. But
Yeah.
but Ninja Turtles here in North America, the popularity was just too big to ignore at the time because you gotta have NES games, and this has all the NES, SNES, Genesis, and Game Boy. Like the Game Boy games, I still have to do, but I played most of the other games growing up. But for me, Turtles in Time stands up as the best one in this collection, but I highly recommend this.
People are willing to shell out for the Turtles.
And there's also 2 arcade games. Yes, thank you, Noble Boy. The 2 arcade games, both 4 players. And I will say this: out of all the Sonic compilations, this one, Sonic Mega Collection. So why this one over Sonic Jam or over even Sonic Origins? That's because this collection, to me, I felt had not only the best value, but the games felt natural, and also Sonic Origins, the Sonic 3 version of that has the worst music from like Carnival Night, Ice Cap Zone, and Launch Base. Whereas here you have the original versions that, well, at least the ones that we got, the ones we remember. Granted, they're from Michael Jackson's team, so take that for what you will. But a lot of people grew up with that, and that's nostalgia to a lot of us. But while we may not have Sonic CD in this collection, we do, however, have Sonic Spinball 3D Blast, which that was hit and miss. Dr. Robotics Beam Machine, but we have bonus games like Flicky and Rice Star. If you have this on PS2 or Xbox, the Streets of Rage games are on there, as well as some of the Game Gear games. So whether you get the GameCube version or the PS2 or Xbox versions, you can't go wrong with Sonic Mega Collection. Now here's one that has not been brought up yet, but I'm going to be the one that brings it up. Metroid Prime Trilogy. So Metroid Prime Trilogy.
Oh yeah.
This came out in
Metroid Prime 4.
Where's Metroid Prime 4?
Who knows?
Who knows? But Metroid Prime Trilogy came out in 2009 from the Wii. Out of nowhere, Nintendo announced this. Granted, there was limited copies, but at the same time, they actually had a decent amount of people to buy. You had all 3 games, because the first 2 games, they made Wii versions in Japan known as New Play Control. So, with that, like, you play Metroid Prime 1 and Metroid Prime 2 separately in Japan for the Wii with the motion controls. So they took those versions, as well as Metroid Prime 3, which was already on the Wii, and put it all together as one big compilation. To me, as much as everyone talks about how they love the Kirby's Dream Collection, to me, this is probably one of the best values I've ever seen in gaming, and it doesn't get any better. Like, the presentation has like all Metroid Prime aesthetics. You have all 3 games. There's like a couple of bonuses. You could be able to use the fusion suit in Metroid Prime 1 if you like, without needing Metroid Fusion, because you can't do that in the remaster, unfortunately. But this is worth it. Highly recommend it.
I also want to point out that it's insane.
1 second.
That Metroid Prime. Oh.
Okami, you first. Sorry, because I heard you first.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I feel so bad I missed out on this collection just because I am very fresh to Metroid. I literally just got into it when Dread came out,
Yes.
and then I played Super after that. And I still haven't been able to pick up the remaster yet, but I'm just really sad it took me this long to get into Metroid. I partially am a little salty at Nintendo because I felt like I would have gotten into it so much sooner if they had shown it a little more love.
Yep.
At that point in time, but
Yeah. What were you gonna say, OneOneTwo?
I also want to point out that it's kind of insane that Metroid Prime Trilogy released in 2009 and Prime 3 was 2007.
Yes.
They included a game that was 2 years old in a collection. That is a bold move.
Yeah.
And I don't think, I'd be genuinely shocked if there was any game in a collection closer to its original release than that. The only other game that I can possibly think of was Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, since Great Ace Attorney 2 was 2017 and the Chronicles was 2021, but even that isn't as short.
The only thing that I could probably say that comes close is the Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario World, because that was 3 years after Mario World came out, because that version of All-Stars came out in 94. But I do have two more. So I'm going to lump both Capcom Arcade Stadiums 1 and 2 together because they're both basically the same type of collection, just two halves. Like you have the first half with one set of games where you have stuff like Final Fight, Strider, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts, Captain Commando. There's a lot of really good games in this collection, like the first half of it. The second half has games like Magic Sword, the Darkstalkers game, Street Fighter Alpha, Three Wonders. I can go on and on. Both of these collections accomplish the same thing. You're in, like, they have this arcade aesthetic with multiple, like, games that you could just check out, like, one after another. You could be able to play the game in any way you want. You could be able to play the game having the arcade cabinet right in front of you. You have the screen, or you could just choose to have like the screen with the black borders or the wallpaper or even full screen, however you want it. You can rewind, you can fast forward, you could be able to play the arcade games in any way you want. To me, they're both great values for what they're going for. Like two sets of classic games. They have like over 33 to 34 games each. And I highly recommend it. Like if you get Capcom Arcade Stadium 1 for free, like it's the collection itself, the basic collection is free, but you get one game with it. And that game is 1943, The Battle of Midway. But you can pretty much either buy the games in chunks, like in packs, or you can buy them individually, however you want it. Or in Capcom Arcade Stadium 2, I believe the free game for that one is Sansan. But if you pre-ordered, at the time, Capcom Fighting Collection, Three Wonders would be the free game. But yeah, great collections. But there's one more collection I'm going to bring up before we move on to the next thing, that I have to give a shout out to. Because while we talk about, because obviously, like, I would normally bring up the Marios, the Mega Mans, and all that stuff. But I do, and yes, when we mentioned this, as like, because it was asked in the chat, collection of mana, yes. Not what I was going to refer to, but I just want to mention, yes, this is definitely worth it. But in terms of collections, I have to bring up one more collection, and that right there is the Aladdin and Lion King. So
let's go.
Why am I bringing this up? Here's the thing. So Nighthawk is the publisher, and Digital Eclipse, who made a lot of great compilations, they made this one. You have different versions of Aladdin and Lion King. At first, you did not have the Super Nintendo version. You only had the Genesis, Game Boy, and Game Gear versions, as well as like the Lion King Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, all that. But they made a DLC for this that adds the Super Nintendo Aladdin as well as the Jungle Book, like all the versions of the Jungle Book. So that actually adds even more to this. I feel like this was actually a very good collection right here. Yeah, I know we had the Disney App New collection. I love that collection too, but this is also really good. I wanted to give this one a shout out.
I was gonna ask about that Jungle Book because I know I saw reprints where the Jungle Book shows up on the physical package.
Yep.
So I didn't know that was DLC if you bought the previous version.
Yes. So if you bought the previous version, you can get the Jungle Book as well as the Super Nintendo version of Aladdin as DLC, which I believe was about like I think $5. Which
It's a good deal.
yeah, it's like and this collection goes for cheap too. So you could actually get this collection cheap and then buy the DLC for $5 and you're good to go. So now, what makes a collection worth it to you? Because this will be the last thing before the community questions. What makes a collection worth it to you, Okami?
For me, I guess it depends on either of one of two things. One, am I already a fan of this franchise? Like, am I a major fan of this franchise that I just want this for partially for collecting purposes? The other one will be a series that I've wanted to play for a long time, and if this is just the most convenient way to play it, personally, like I don't have to like I don't have to buy this game at secondhand for an exorbitant amount of money.
No.
When I can just get the collection, and at least I actually have it now.
Yep. That's a good way to look at it. OneOneTwo?
I'm going to be completely honest. My primary answer is 1-to-1 what Okami just said. It's, do I like the series and do I want to support the series? That is my number one answer. Although I do also use collections as a way to get into franchises that I normally wouldn't try otherwise. That's actually why I picked up the Ace Attorney trilogy.
Yeah.
Because before I played Ace Attorney, I just didn't like visual novels. I tried a few.
You tried a few, and then what happened? Repeat that, please.
And I saw Ace Attorney, and I saw before I tried Ace Attorney, I did not like visual novels. I couldn't get into them. And I saw Ace Attorney, what the gameplay was like, particularly its emphasis on logic and finding contradictions really appealed to me, and I wanted to give the game a shot, and the rest is history. I played basically the whole series after that, waiting for each new collection to come out as a result. I actually already beat Spirit of Justice like a week ago because I just could not stop playing. Those games are awesome, and I would say those are the two biggest factors. Is either do I want to support the series, support a series I already love, or is this a series that I want to give a shot for a usually pretty decent price?
Yeah.
The next collection I plan on getting, or one of the next collections I want to get at some point, is Metal Gear Solid for the exact same reason.
All right.
Master Collection.
All right.
I just completely forgot since we were talking about Ace Attorney, but I just wanted to throw it out there. The Danganronpa trilogy, I totally forgot is a thing, and that's how I got into Danganronpa. So
Yep.
that's another trilogy that I fell in love with Danganronpa first. That's how I got into Ace Attorney.
Yep.
It has one of the best titles because they use decadence and it's a decade of Danganronpa.
Yep.
I know I have that collection, and all the extra physical stuff is worth it. The prints, everything, the case, everything's worth it.
Yes. ArcadeBear.
I'm probably going to be a weird one here because I'm also thinking like technically not a compilation of games, but a compilation of music. I'm a huge fan of Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm, and you can get a lot of different tracks from other Square titles in like that one game, right?
Yes.
And most recently now they had, what was it, like not All-Star Battle, because that was the arcade machine. It's whatever recently came out, Battle Line something or other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic game and series. So to me, like the music, like something like that is what's going to compel me to want to support that series and that game. Square Enix already gets enough of my money, let's be real. But because I was also thinking another thing, if they ever made a compilation of it, technically they exist, but they're not under one package yet, which is the Pixel remasters. I don't think you can get a single CD or DVD or Blu-ray or whatever where all 6 games are there. You kind of have to buy them individually, piecemeal. So if they did actually want to sell a bunch of games all at once again, put a single disc or 2-disc package, if you're going to include maybe classic 7, 8, 9 in there as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could sell a bunch of titles right there. honestly, probably though, what I've mostly gravitated to in like where I've bought most of my compilations were the ones of games that I haven't played before. So it's more like a console compilation rather than a individual franchise compilation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, although they haven't put out like a new Sega Genesis collection in a while. It still seems to be Volume 1, and then they put out a new Genesis collection, and they call it Volume 1 again, or Greatest Hits, or something. And like, put more Sega Genesis games out there, like sell me on something that I haven't tried before, but because the Genesis has a lot of good games on it, I think. But I keep seeing the same 30.
Oh yeah, like because there's a lot of other good Genesis
Very
games.
true.
Because the problem is that there's a lot of Genesis games that Sega did not make that they can't re-release on their own. They would have to.
Yeah, that's true. They're all third party, aren't they?
Yeah, they have to contract third parties. And there's some third parties that unfortunately don't exist anymore, or they have been absorbed in by other companies. So it would be a lot harder to get some games re-released. Like for instance, like anything from Hudson Soft, you have to go through Konami in order to get those games now.
Right. That makes
Or
sense.
trying to get Banjo-Kazooie on the Switch, or just outside of Rare Replay in general.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, I'm surprised none of us brought up Rare Replay, and I saw it first in chat. Yeah, that was a good. That's a good call out.
Yeah, Rare Replay,
I am very confident that Banjo-Tooie is going to show up at some point. If we can get Blast Corps and RC Pro-Am, I mean, I think it's a matter of
Hope
time.
so. I mean, it's a miracle Banjo-Kazooie isn't Smash, honestly.
but yeah, like,
True.
but yeah, like, because I know, like, with the Genesis collections, that it's a great way for those who never grew up with Sega to get into them, but also at the same time, for those that have, that you'll be able to play the games again, like to relive your memories. But that's a good point, like, that you guys have been making so far.
I do think it is kind of frustrating when Sega releases the same games every single time, particularly when it's on the same console. That's really frustrating.
Yeah.
At this point, at one point, you have to pick a collection and stick to it instead of releasing. Because how many ways can you play Sonic 2 on the Switch? Like 4 or 5? Like it's a little absurd.
Yeah.
Am I the only one requesting them to put an Echo the Dolphin compilation out there? No, just me.
Like, cause considering the fact that like you have Echo the Dolphin on, like there's like more than just the Genesis games. There was like a Dreamcast game, and then they ported that game to PS2. So
Okami, do you think the sequels are better? Because I'm gonna be honest, and we actually have not touched on this collection yet, which is it's not really I guess it's kind of a collection. The Nintendo Switch Online apps, which is how because I personally have been playing and beating every Nintendo Switch Online game that has been coming out as they come out. I only have Blast Corps left right now because I already beat the Mario games that just got announced.
Nice.
yep.
But please try to sell me on the other Echo games because I really disliked the first one.
So here's the thing. I started with the one that's on the PS2, which is Defender of the Future, which is the soft reboot one. I will say, Echo the Dolphin's probably the hardest franchise to play, like at least that I have played. Because, you know, you got everything in the ocean that's trying to kill you, and you got the air mechanic, and it's I mean, I think it was supposed to, at least the original, I think that was the intention, so you don't, you know, again, you don't go through the game in a day. I will say the one on the PS2 is one of the most, especially for, keep in mind PS2 graphics at the time, that game was visually stunning to me. Like, the whole underwater atmosphere is beautiful. I do love the story. I kind of call it Echo the Dolphin, Defender of the Future, Ocarina of Time, because there's a lot of without spoiling it, there's a lot of timey-wimey stuff happening. And there's boss fights, but I will say I think Defender of the Future is worth it if you can. I have a physical copy. I don't know how hard it is to find a physical copy of that now, but I think you can. I have tried emulating it in the past because I've thought about streaming that game for like World Ocean Month or something like that, which is something I'll get to at some point. but honestly, is Time Traveling Dolphin is a pitch that someone made, and it's actually really interesting.
Yep.
I wish they had continued it from that game, because that game's my favorite in the series. I would look up gameplay. It is hard. I won't lie to you. It can be hard. I don't think it's as difficult as the first ones. It's kind of like Underwater Zelda.
Yep.
Interesting.
If you want to take that for what you will.
That's I've not heard that descriptor before. I will definitely check it out. I do want to point out I'm definitely in the mood for hard games at all times, considering, like I said, my favorite franchise is Mega Man.
Yeah.
And Contra is also my all-time favorite.
Wait, what was the last thing you said? After Mega Man?
I think the thing that I said, Mega Man and Contra are like two of my favorite
Contra,
franchises.
yeah, Contra. Okay. All right.
But I think the thing that soured me on the first game was I just didn't like the controls that much. I thought it was really imprecise for the type of platforming. Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah.
And if the second, I don't know what number in the series it is, but if Defenders of the Ocean has decent controls, I am more than willing to give it a shot. I think that you've definitely sold me on that pitch.
Yep.
I will say the controls in Defender of the Future are very, very smooth. I will tell you that. It's just it is difficult.
Yep.
But not because the controls are janky. They're actually really nice.
Yep.
Fair enough. I'll give it a shot. Thanks for the advice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know that you've been waiting, Azran.
I'm sure both of them have people out there who will echo their thoughts.
Yep.
I see.
Ha ha ha
I just got it. I'm sorry, I just got what you said.
That's usually me who's last.
But go ahead, Azran, because I know that it's your turn.
So I'm going to split this answer in two parts.
Yep.
There's one is the compilations of games that I have played before. And what I'm looking for in those is there a reasonable amount of upgrade to the experience from the original? And does it make it more convenient to play?
Yep.
Because, like, if I have to dig up my GameCube, that's work. But if they put a compilation of GameCube games on the Switch, and they do a decent job of it, then I'm probably going to pick up the Switch version for the game that I like and replay it on there, because it's already set up and it's more modern.
Alright.
But then there's games that I've never played, like Collection of Mana and Atari 50. I never played those before, but I picked up the compilations anyway. And for those, I say it comes down to how much is compiled there. Do I feel like I'll get a good sense of history from it to fill in the gaps that I missed from not playing the original releases? And in Atari 50's case, it's like, this is a really good price point. The base price of this game is $30.
Yes.
And you get 50 arcade experiences with all the extra developer features and stuff.
Yep.
So the price point that OneOneTwo mentioned way earlier definitely helps in all that. But yeah, do I think I would get a good sense of the history from the game, and do I see other people who enjoyed the game recommending the collection?
Yes.
Because I saw plenty of people stand by the Collection of Mana before I picked it up.
Okay. Yeah. So I pretty much echo everything that all four of you have said, but I'm gonna add one other thing. What they mean is basically to preserve the games. Like, that's what makes the game that's what makes the collection worth it. Preservation, because you want to be able to have all the games to a much broader audience, so that way you would be able to make sure that in some platforms they can be sold for years to come. Unfortunately, it's not always lucky, and some collections have emulation issues, or there's some other issues that prevent it from being as great as they could be. But yeah, that's pretty much just how it is. So
But see, that brings up the argument, though, that like some people are going to consider the preservation thing to be like, if it's not the original version, if they make any change to this compilation version whatsoever, then that's gonna not be the same game. So if someone wants to play the original release, then they don't have that option.
So that and seeing what's in the chat is ironically segueing to the first community question that we're gonna share, which is, what video game compilation or collection did you find the most disappointing and why? Which was asked by Icepick. Because a lot of people say Mario 3D All Stars is disappointing because of the limited time thing. Which, yes, that's a legit issue. That should not have an unlimited time. That should be in stores like now. They should have never taken it off the eShop. But that's not my disappointing game. That's not my disappointing.
I would say that's more of an issue with Nintendo than the collection itself.
Yes.
I agree.
That said, I would probably say if I had to choose anything that was absolutely disappointing, ironically enough, actually does go back to Nintendo. So the Wii version of Mario All-Stars, you want to know why I say this one specifically? It's a ROM dump on a CD. That's my answer. You guys can say whatever you want. Disappointing. Disappointing. So, OneOneTwo, what's your disappointing?
This is a hard one because I feel like most collections are generally pretty solid. Like, I actually think that when developers do put in the time to preserve their games, generally they're good. I'm more than confident that someone is going to later say an answer that I will agree with, and I will change it to that. But the first one that immediately comes to mind is the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. I was looking forward to that for a very long time because I love Ninja Gaiden, similar in vein to Contra and Mega Man. It's one of those original franchises that I just have a lot of fondness for. I played the 2D games a lot, and I've always wanted to try the 3D games. And man, they just messed up that collection in every single way possible. First of all, you cannot play the collection on Steam without a controller. There's just no keyboard support. I don't know if they fixed this, but that's ridiculous. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, there absolutely needs to be keyboard support for a game if it's on Steam, in my personal opinion. On top of that, the games just didn't run very well. Like, I remember there were a lot of frame rate drops in Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, and even in the original Ninja Gaiden Sigma. And I don't really know what happened there. It just felt like they didn't put the time in to make the games run well on modern platforms. And also the fact that the games load individually on the Switch, like I'm talking like it's 3 separate icons, that was kind of surprising. And I know that a couple of other collections do that, and it's not a huge deal. But like, for example, in the Metal Gear Solid collection, they have a separate app for all the bonus stuff. There is just nothing in Ninja Gaiden Master Collection that you can't find elsewhere. Yeah. Like there's no bonus content at all, and as a result, I definitely think that is the worst collection that I've played to my memory right now. Again, I'm sure someone else will say one that I agree with more.
All right. ArcadeBear?
Did I bring up Action 52 yet? Honestly speaking,
is that the answer to everything?
Well, it is a pretty horrible compilation that I had the misfortune of physically owning and playing, so that would definitely be my top answer. But somebody brought up the PS1 Classic in chat as well. I never got to play that one, but I do remember looking at the list of games thinking, like, where's the stuff that I want to play? Because there's a lot of good PS1 classics, and I feel like a lot of it got left off the console. Mm-hmm. So I never ended up picking it up myself. But then I think there were also just like a lot of issues with the port of the games themselves, and that I think they were also just ROM dumps for the most part. Like there wasn't really anything new or unique to owning the PS1 Mini. Mm-hmm. It was just a series of games that, like, yeah, there's some gems in there, but what are you really paying for and getting, right?
Yeah, exactly. And half the games in that collection were like using the PAL region and not the NTSC
Yeah, so they had like different frame rate issues, right?
Yes, and honestly, it hurt the worst game in the collection even more, which was Tom Clancy's not Splinter Cell, Rainbow Six. That the most half-hearted collection. Wow, like PS1 Classic was absolutely disappointing. I agree with you on that one. Azren?
Okay, realistically, my answer should be 3D All-Stars because it's the one that I actually care about. And, like, the games hold up. I'm fine with the versions that we got. Even, like, I'm not super into the Mario 64 speedrunning thing where, you have that version that removed certain elements that speedrunners are going to want. That doesn't really affect me. It was interesting that they added GameCube controller support after the fact and that it wasn't just on there to begin with, but okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the big thing about it is the lack of Galaxy 2. Not even as a separate release. So, for it to be All-Stars, for it to be a collection, shouldn't it all be collected?
Yes, Galaxy 2 should have been on
the
there.
3D games. And I like Galaxy 1 more than 2, but I still like 2. It's a good game. It deserves to be included in stuff. So that's the one I actually care about, and there's your rant for anyone in chat who was waiting for it. But I think the most disappointing one from what I've heard on outside spheres that we should probably bring up here in some capacity, even though I haven't even touched it because of its bad reputation, GTA the Trilogy.
Oh, right. Oh, right. That one. Because that one had a lot of problems. That one had a lot of issues with frame rate, a lot of bugs.
We've talked about how compilations can get us into series, and I might have been willing to explore GTA for the first time in this collection of the original 3 games. But then I heard all these terrible things about it, and never picked it up.
Bullet dodged. Okami?
I'll bring up a different one since we talked about the Zelda one beforehand. For a different one, I will say the Silent Hill HD collection. Particularly the one for Xbox, because I remember at the time grabbing it for Xbox because it's what I had at the time. I had a 360. First of all, it didn't include 1 and 4, if I remember correctly. And I am very much in the minority where 4 is actually my favorite. But again, I know I'm not the majority on that. But it was already missing 4. It was missing 1, which I can understand maybe not having 4. But how do you not have 1 was like kind of like my thing. You didn't want the first 3 together, like you didn't just want to make that a trilogy there. But I remember that game had it also had frame rate issues. You couldn't run it for like I couldn't run it probably for more than like I don't know, half an hour before the game just straight up crashed on me. It was just an absolute. I was kind of wondering how this was able to just kind of sell in general in the state that it was in.
Yeah. Can't believe they messed that collection up too. Like, because the source code got thrown out. So unfortunately, without the source code, it was never going to be anywhere near the originals.
How do you have a collection without the first game? That is just insane.
Exactly.
I know. 4 I can understand because I know 4 was kind of like its own thing in a way. I think 4 wasn't even originally supposed to be Silent Hill. I think they just tied it in later. If I may be incorrect on that, but that's what I thought I heard.
Yeah.
But how do you not include 1?
Exactly.
The original.
Hear me out on this new lucrative business model. We release all the odd-numbered games as one trilogy, and all the even-numbered games in another trilogy, and then
Wow.
I've heard all month.
Yes. Next up, from that dude Zero, what do you consider the best compilation or collection in terms of content? Well, there's a lot to be discussed on that one, but I'm going to go with one answer. Me personally speaking, I'm gonna have to go with like again, Metroid Prime trilogy. Like just you can't. This is the best value and really good content too. That's my answer. 1 and 2.
I'm gonna guess most of us are gonna say Atari 50, or at least at least more than one person. So I'm gonna break in and say Atari 50. I may not have the game myself, but my significant other has been playing it, and she said like this is one of the best like museums of video gaming ever. Like that is just a that and she told me about like how much was in the game, and it's actually kind of insane. It's honestly difficult to wrap my head around it. Like I think it was over 100 games. That's nuts.
Yep.
So I would say that. I will also give an alternate answer so someone else can talk more about Atari 50. Since I haven't played it myself, my alternate answer is I would also argue Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection, because that is 6 RPGs. That's a lot, and those games are not short. They're like 25 hours each, a little give or take depending on the game, but like 20 hours times 6 games, that's a lot of content. Even more if you go for 100%.
Yes.
So I think that is absolutely in the running.
And I will also agree with Ninja Turtles from my end as well. Arcade Bear?
I don't know that I have one. That's the hard thing. Like, there's so many good compilations out there. If we're talking about like overall content, admittedly, I haven't played a lot of the collections that you guys have played. So, like, I'm kind of really interested in wanting to play something like the Kirby Dream Collection.
Yes.
Not that I have a Wii to even play it on.
Oh,
but
You could get a Wii U.
I mean, I had a Wii U, and then there was a big fat line of dead pixels on the tablet. But anyway, yeah. And what do you do about that? So,
yeah.
No, Team NT Cowbugman Collection is pretty damn good because there's just a lot of games on there. The Castlevania Advance Collection, because I'm such a huge sucker for Metroidvanias, and there's a lot of them on there. And then also just other classic Castlevania games too that aren't necessarily the Metroidvania gameplay. But yeah, I'd say between those two, like, you have a pretty tough decision to make.
All right, sounds good. Azran?
Okay, I talked about Atari 50 earlier in the podcast, so if anyone wants the lowdown on what's in here, you can go back and listen to that part. But I described like the timeline, the developer commentary, the 50 arcade games, the unreleased prototypes, the low price point. It's great, but I'm gonna throw in a curveball, something we haven't mentioned yet that occurred to me and probably is the best value.
Yep.
Shovel Knight Treasure Trove.
Yes, Shovel Knight Treasure Trove. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Jeez. Because they just kept throwing out all the free content.
Yep.
Right, it's actually 4 platformers. I mean, 3.5 if you don't really count Plague Knight, because Plague Knight is just Plague Knight is a different take on the original Shovel Knight campaign that got renamed to Shovel of Hope when the collection became a thing and they needed to differentiate it.
Yes.
So I know there's mixed thoughts around Plague Knight, but you still get them. And it's like, you can ignore that part if you want to. But you get Shovel Knight, you get Spectre of Torment, which is my favorite of the 4.
And the
King of Cards, which is solid in its own way. And then they bothered to throw in a 2D fighter. That's the Smash Light with all the Shovel Knight characters. And it just comes bundled with all that stuff. And that's pretty fun in its own right.
Yep. Okami?
And great soundtrack.
Indeed, yes. Okami?
Oh, this is really hard. Cause like, okay, I'm trying to think from a very subjective standpoint where I'm like, yeah, I love Ace Attorney, I love Danganronpa, but apart from like the visual upgrades, I'm not really sure there was anything major that was done to the games themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Danganronpa got the board game.
I mean, the gotcha board game. Yes, I have played a little bit of it when I'm really bored and I have nothing else to do.
Yep.
Okay, so I think for me, and Kingdom Hearts is more so for convenience sake, I want to say then that kind of leads me down to Spyro Reignited. And again, I love Kirby's Dream Collection. God, okay, it's down between the Zero Escape ones, Dream Collection, and Spyro Reignited.
Yep.
Spyro Reignited got a whole upgrade in the visual department, and it's fantastic, and I love it. Like I said, Kirby Dream Collection, you got all the additional challenge stages and things like that.
Yep.
I think I lean more so towards the Zero Escape one, because here's the thing. The original didn't have voice acting because it was the DS.
Yes.
And I do admit there are some things that do get lost in the new collection, because I'm trying hard. I'm really trying very hard. I don't want to spoil anything, and I won't. I'm just watching my phrasing. When certain plot elements kick in, the DS came in use because you had the two different screens, and two different things were bouncing back and forth during reveals and stuff.
Yes.
So you do, unfortunately, there was no worker. They couldn't find a workaround for that. But I will say, I think the fact that the game just added fully voice acted, I think everyone in the cast did extremely well. I cried, so that should be a testament to how hard I think the voice actors went. I cried so hard, and I still do on replays. Even though I know it's coming, I still get choked up a lot. But at least, it also includes novel mode. So at the very least, I tell people, if you're going to pick up that collection, please, please, please make sure you're playing in novel mode so you don't miss narration. That's extremely important for certain scenes.
Yes.
But I would say, yeah. I would say it's definitely much down to Zero Escape then for me, just because of all the additional features.
Okay. Sounds good. So before we go into the next question, so OneOneTwo, I know you said that you gotta go soon. Is that correct?
Yes, I have to go basically right now, sadly. But it was great to be here, and thank you for having me on. And thank you to ArcadeBear, Asman, and OkamiHylia for the excellent conversation. This was great.
Well, before you go, for you first, OneOneTwo, because I know we're gonna continue on right after this. Where can we find you specifically, OneOneTwo?
You can mostly find me on the Mega Man subreddit at reddit.com/r/Megaman, or you can find me on the Discord at discord.gg/Megaman. That's usually what that's usually where I stand on the internet. I can also post my Twitter, or was it already posted? Okay. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm somewhat active there. If you want to see what games I'm playing, that's what I mostly use it for.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you all for having me on, and I hope you all have a great rest of your night.
Take care, OneOneTwo. Thanks for coming in.
Later.
Yep. All right, so now for the next question, we got a couple more. This one's from Squire. Would you prefer if one compilation of a specific series became a standard for future releases on different consoles, like Mega Man Legacy Collection, or would you be flexible for new compilations that offered different kinds of experience despite sharing a similar library? That really depends. That's a really loaded question to me. I feel like the main standard should be to have as many games of a certain series in one collection. But if you can't fit it all within a cartridge or disc, you should be able to have it you should be able to split it in multiple parts. So for example, such and such collection part 1, such and such collection part 2, until they're all released together. That's how I would do it. So that's really my answer. It's a very tough question to answer, but that's how I feel. ArcadeBear, your thoughts?
Maybe somebody knows more about this than I do, but wasn't there a collection or a compilation that was starting to be built on the Nintendo Switch? I forget if it's from Capcom specifically or if it's from another developer, but they released maybe 2 games when it was first announced. I feel like it was announced during one of the Nintendo, maybe an indie direct, or maybe it was just a normal Nintendo direct. But they started with a game or 2, and then they were going to expand it out to 25 or 30 games. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of here. So if it's a developer, and Capcom doesn't necessarily only make Mega Man games. Obviously, they have a bunch of other sort of games in their franchises and IPs. So something like that is more what I'd be looking for, right? If I'm gonna favor a developer, I also want to get a lot of their range of games, I guess you could say, rather than, as much as I enjoy Kingdom Hearts 2 as well, like also not just number 2. Yeah, like I don't necessarily want a full compilation of only Kingdom Hearts games.
Yeah.
Though I did just say I want Final Fantasy 1 to 6 as a single unit.
Yep.
So hey, don't listen to me. I'm just an old man rambling on the internet.
It's all good. It's all good.
I mean, that's how Kingdom Hearts got started. They just smashed Disney and Final Fantasy. Were like, hey, you want to?
And who knew that was going to be a winning combination?
No one knew. No one knew.
You never know.
Exactly. Azran?
I just want games to be available, and however that needs to happen. So, okay, we're coming up on, Switch successor, probably gonna happen in the near future. Next generation is possible. Maybe not so much for the other guys yet, but we eventually we hit new hardware, and okay, are they gonna resell us Mega Man Legacy Collection, or are they going to put out like the Switch 2 version of Mega Man Legacy Collection with extra added features that were not in the original release? And then if they do that, are people who bought the original going to be able to like buy a little DLC add-on that gives them the stuff that was added in the new version so that they don't have to buy the same games over again?
Exactly.
It's going to come down to the business practice for me as long as it's like, I just don't want to feel like I'm paying for the same thing so many times.
Agreed.
And if that can be avoided, however that happens, then I'm cool with it.
Yeah, like just keep adding to what you already have. Like otherwise, if anything, like just make it so that people have to buy the same games again. It's gonna make people not want to get it. It's like, I already have it on one platform. Why do I want to get it on another? So that's pretty much it.
Except I did buy Okami like 4 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I have.
Well, thank you for purchasing me 4 times.
Speaking of Okami, your turn.
Man, can I just ask Monolith to can I just ask Monolith to please put out, and I'm not just talking about Xenoblade 1 through 3, could we just get the entire franchise, please? Available? Is it that much to ask?
I mean, I would like that.
I've already played 1 through 3, and 3 is my favorite, but funny enough, it goes 3, 2, 1, but like, I just want Xenogears, and so I'm like, please, I beg you. But yeah, gosh, the answer to that, I feel like, I don't know, it really depends. Like, if certain series smush together, I don't know. I feel like that one's really hard for me to... I feel like this one's really hard for me to answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very hard question. I'll admit to that one. Next one is from Sohn. And before anything, I just want to bring up, Sohn is a streamer who tends to do every Monday like a Sega Genesis challenge. Like for the past 2 years, he's been streaming every game that's on the Sega Genesis Classic so far. He's been playing it on PS4, and the RPGs take a while, but he finally got through a lot of them, and then like now he's getting through like some of the Sonic games. So it's been interesting to see how his journey's been going. So his question is, what kind of compilations or collections would you like to see in the future? Go wild. Marvel versus Capcom.
Yeah, good luck.
Another one, and this is from Konami, Tiny Toons / Animaniacs, because
That'd be a good one.
they made a lot of Tiny Toons games back in the 90s, as well as Animaniacs games, so naturally speaking, I could see that. And if I had to pick one more, the Castlevania DS collection. That one too. Arcade Bear?
Dragon Quest, please give me all the Dragon Quest.
Yes.
1 through 9. Throw in the Japanese MMO, or like, they recently made it so that you can play it as a single player story. let's get that released worldwide, please. I mean, I know that there's a lot of work involved in that, but also I'm still waiting for Dragon Quest 3 2D HD.
Same.
Hello.
Same.
Are we going to have the 40th anniversary of Dragon Quest before we even get more news about that? Because I remember the 35th anniversary stream. Hello.
Yeah, exactly.
Dragon Quest for sure would be like, again, I'm already like Square's #1 fanboy, but like you would easily have my money. Shoot, there was another collection that I was thinking about, but now I can't even move on past me. Dragon Quest is like my #1.
Because I'm looking at my chat and Dragon Flame says Crazy Castle Collection, like those Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle games.
Yes.
I remember those games. And then the Game Boy Advance had a Woody Woodpecker one. Azran, your turn?
On a conceptual level, not a specific franchise, but sometimes the material of a game story exits the world of the game.
Yes.
Like how there's someone in chat reminded me that there's 3 anime episodes from Kirby Right Back At Ya on this disc for the Kirby 20th.
Yes.
And OkamiHylia brought up Danganronpa Decadence. But you know what that collection doesn't have?
What?
That pertains to the story? The Danganronpa anime that bridges the gap between the second and third games.
Yes.
So I think it would be great in general if you're gonna have stuff like that, wouldn't it be wonderful if we lived in a world where all that could be compiled together in a compilation?
Yep.
Like, here's all the episodes of the anime. Maybe it costs more as a result, and then it's up to the customer if they want to put out the price for that. Yada yada. But then also like help a guy out. The Danganronpa anime in particular is like you gotta watch the episodes in a specific order because they split the thing into 2 seasons, and you have to go back and forth between the 2 seasons to view it in the right order. So like a little in-game guide that's like, watch this, then this, then this.
Specifically, it's called the Hope and Despair arc.
Yes.
So you gotta bounce back and forth between them.
Right, and then it's not just a Danganronpa thing. Like if a game gets a graphic novel thing that expands on the universe or a comic book, like wouldn't it be nice to have a digital copy of that within the game?
Oh my god!
For
Danganronpa
your
has
viewing.
light novels.
That would be
And
great.
it includes those.
That'd be great.
So you're asking for a Drakengard and Nier compilation?
Yes.
Sure, why not?
I want that.
He said to go wild.
Yes.
But for one specific franchise that I would like a compilation from, let's go with the classic Donkey Kong Country.
Sure.
Put 1 to 3 together. Maybe you could do one of those things where you get the original graphics because they do hold up pretty well. And then if they wanted to play around with a new modern look, then maybe make it a toggleable option because there are some collections, like Tomb Raider recently did that with the toggle the resolution at a button press. So that could be fun. And if you want to include the 3DS version of Returns so that you're not using force motion controls and Tropical Freeze just to make it a total pentology, then fine by me.
Yep. That's also fair too. Okami?
Well, I didn't realize I inadvertently answered this with Xenoblade, so instead instead of my not Welsh Cat Girls compilation, probably Fire Emblem.
Yes.
Specifically a lot of the older Fire Emblems that it's just extremely difficult to get now, and there's like no way, at least for me, to play it unless I wanted to emulate it, unless I wanted to like sell a bodily organ on the black market.
Yeah. That would be nice to have that.
And also if they could just add, because I know some people get so obsessed when you bring it up. Some people get really upset when you bring it up, but I think the option to turn off permadeath should still be an option, even in the older games, just for accessibility's sake.
Agreed. I 100% agree.
I would love to see that with the permadeath option.
Yes. I do have one more collection that I want to bring up for that particular answer that it just dawned on me in my mind. So how about a Square Enix collection of like a big Square Enix collection with like a lot of their obscure games they otherwise would not release on their own because they would not sell that well. And I'm gonna name drop a few games like The original ActRaiser, because we got the remake, but the original ActRaiser, there's also Rad Racer for the NES, as well as the sequel. King's Knight, which is not a great game, but it still needs to be re-released so people can see some of Square's early stuff. 3D Hot Rally. That's actually a Nintendo game. I meant 3D World Runner, sorry. That was actually a Square game where it's basically a copycat of Space Harrier.
Space Harrier, yeah.
Yes. They've also done a lot of weird stuff like the Tobal #1, Tobal #2 fighting games that were made by Square, and it has Akira Toriyama art, rest in peace. And we also had a lot of other like amazing Square games that haven't re-released. They had a shmup on the PlayStation called Einhander, which is one of the rarest games, and I actually own that game. That needs to be re-released in a collection. Guys, God Bless the Ring, Illusion of Gaia, Soul Blazer, Terranigma, Threads of Fate, which is an action RPG where you play as 2 characters. It's fun. Vagrant Story. Like, I could go on and on. Square, The Bouncer. Bring that back, too. Like, Square has a lot of games they're sitting on, and they're doing nothing with them. What are you going to do? Like, Robotrek, yes. Also, Bahamut Lagoon. Please bring that back as well. You brought Live Alive back. Bring back Bahamut Lagoon. I could go on and on. Like, a big, epic Square Enix collection. So, if some games would not sell well on their own, putting them in the collection would entice people to actually get these games. So, Square, the ball's in your court. Do it.
The Fair and Square collection.
I mean, I would buy it.
I think Falcom should do that too, because like I know for some reason the Legend of Heroes series is kind of like very underrated here, at least in the States. So I'm like, why don't they just do that to, like, there's a whole bunch, there's like I could think of so many different JRPGs that should just get some sort of compilation. They might sell better. Agreed,
yeah.
Fire? Capcom?
Yeah, Breath of Fire, like, because I know we got 1 and 2 on the NSO, but I would like 3, 4, and even 5. And I also agree with Maverick in the chat, in East Collection, yes, that's another one too. But I would also want, you know what I also want? I would also want Professor Layton Collection. I would also, like, I could go on and on. Like, there's so many different collections in general.
Professor Layton? Never heard of him.
That's what I plan to get into when I'm done with Ace Attorney.
Yes.
I really wish there was a compilation.
Yes, level 5. Please give it to us. And I would even have a compilation of, like, but again, like, my most wanted is Marvel vs. Capcom. Just Capcom, settle whatever beef you have with Disney and do it, please. Because, like, you can have, like, all the games, and also, do, like, a collection that has, like, Marvel and Fox, like, beat-em-ups. So, like, Disney owns a lot of stuff. They can get companies together to do. There was, like, a beat-em-up of, like, X-Men with 6 players. There was one that had Spider-Man with 4 players from Sega. There was, like, a Captain America and Avengers game, 4 players. There was a Punisher game, arcade. There was also, like, for the Fox stuff, you have Aliens from Konami, which was like a Contra-style shmup, or Contra-style run and gun. You have The Simpsons, and you also have, from Capcom, Alien vs. Predator, which is one of the more sought-out games. Great game. Do that, and also re-release the PS1 Resident Evil games and Code Veronica in a collection. Capcom, do that. And Dino Crisis, do that too.
Oh, please, I'm begging. I can't even emulate Dino Crisis. It runs like garbage.
Like,
I've tried.
Do that and re-release the other Onimusha games. They only re-released the first one. So, yes, with the classic basement theme, yes, that needs to be preserved too. We talk about game preservation, preserve that. Like, not everything needs to be lost in history. But
oh my god. You brought up Dino Crisis, Shell, and I was just thinking we never mentioned the Jurassic Park collection that just dropped not that long ago.
Oh, right, I forgot that's a thing too.
I haven't been able to buy it yet, but I've been wanting it since they announced it. I completely forgot.
I want that because I grew up with the Genesis ones, and that's my nostalgia right there.
I know.
But next question, from Dari, when do you think it's not worth collecting a game? Where is the line drawn? Like region, price, language, or something else? Business practices is one of the reasons. Another one is if it's overpriced for like a half-baked collection, or if it's Japanese only and I can't read like any of the text. And yes, the orange box counts as a collection in a bundle. That Alpha line, it's not just 3D All-Stars. It's not just 3D All-Stars. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Like that's not the only game that's like that. But yeah. It just depends. It's just various factors on what would make me not want to get a collection. But that's how I felt. That's how I feel about it. OkamiHylia?
Yeah, price point for sure. Like, gaming is an expensive hobby, no matter how you slice it. You know, there are ways to emulate for a lot of older things, because I'll just go out here and say I'm a huge fan of Austin Eruption, the YouTube channel.
Yep.
He does a lot of like weird video, or like 40-minute long videos where it's like rare games this, rare games that, and then he'll go on and research and things like, you know, yeah, if you want a boxed copy of this game, it's going to run you X amount of dollars, and it's stupid what people want for a in-box copy, but that's collector level thinking, right?
Yes.
Most of us just want to get a game, play it, and then we're probably never going to play it again, except maybe like 2 years from now or whatever, because nostalgia. And most of the time, if you know where to look, you can get that for very close to free, if not free. Etrian Odyssey. Man, I hadn't even thought about Etrian Odyssey. I remember wanting to pick that up because that was right around my birthday. And then I'm thinking, like, it's only 1, 2, and 3, and it's kind of a lot of money. And the first 2 games, unless they made some quality of life changes, which they did when they re-released Etrian Odyssey 1 and 2 as like brand new games with newer mechanics, why didn't we get those versions in the 1, 2, 3 collection? Why did we get the original games, right? Which is something that Azran actually also brought up before too. Like, if you're going to remake a game and then package it in a collection, some people want that authentic, original, hardcore experience, and then some people want the I'm a fan of the quality of life stuff. Like, make it simpler for me to play. My time is limited. My money is limited. Like, give me everything that you can that makes it a little bit easier and accessible for me to want to play. If it's not, I'm going to kind of overlook your collection.
Yeah.
The best option is when they have both.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
collection of mana right here. You can use the save states, or you could pretend they're not there.
Yep.
But
Original.
the save states definitely make the game a lot more playable to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if they're going to like not have like a version of the game with quality of life stuff, why bother? Like, especially if you re-release a game that has the quality of life stuff. So I agree on that one as well. Which makes me sad, because as much as I enjoyed the Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, I still think it's a collection worth picking up. It didn't need to just be arcade ports. They could have just used, like, for example, Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max, which was PSP, but it has like all the characters that were in the arcade version, and Street Fighter 3 Third Strike Online Edition, which adds a lot of extra content as well. They didn't just have to make it arcade ports, but yeah. Azran?
Well, the big one is, bad word of mouth. I brought up GTA Trilogy earlier, and that is a collection that I actively did not pick up, even though it exists. So it's a pretty easy line to draw there. But let me tell you about a little game that's got a Guinness World Record. But it's not a game with a Guinness World Record. It's a company.
Yep.
The Arcade Archives series currently has the record for most consecutive releases, because they keep putting out an Arcade Archives game like weekly.
Yeah.
And one might consider that a collection, because it's all under the same brand name. So if you wanted like all these arcade ports, you could, in theory, individually buy all the Arcade Archives games. But as ArcadeBear brought up, it can get expensive if you're going to be collecting everything. So that is a series I haven't even touched, even though there might be like 1 or 2 that are probably worth it to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I know there's all these other games in this collection, and I risk living with myself having it be incomplete. So I was
Yeah.
like, no, don't go anywhere near that. Just let them exist.
Yes. What about you, Okami?
I want to say it's kind of super similar for me, where it really the two biggest factors are honestly money and time. I am somebody who has to, unfortunately, because I'm chronically ill. There's a lot of points sometimes where I just don't have the energy some days to put in as much time as I would like into a stream, mostly because I'm so fatigued, I'm so exhausted. I call those my autopilot days. But it's between, so at least in terms of the time, at the very least, even if it doesn't have a ton of gameplay, as long as there's quality of life improvements, even just updating the art style, just something that will kind of incentivize me to go back, as opposed to trying to get through my backlog already.
Yeah.
And again, price point, unfortunately, it is a huge thing for me, particularly because I have to be very careful about the games I'm buying throughout the year as they get released again. It unfortunately comes down to my stupid body, unfortunately. So I have to, unfortunately, I'm very limited in both time and money. I mean, we all are.
Mm-hmm.
That goes for everybody. But I have to be very particular about, okay, what am I going to get right away? And what am I thinking about getting if there's a sale?
Yeah.
That's where my mindset typically goes. Or like, does this publisher tend to have a lot of sale? Like not like Nintendo, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more stingy with sales, unfortunately. But like, again, like Capcom or like other companies that tend to do like big Steam sales every now and then, that I'm like, I can hold off on this one. I'll put this one on the back burner, but I'm still interested.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. So we have a few more questions. So next one is a quick one from Maverick. What was the first compilation of? We already answered that. What was the first compilation collection that you picked up to play? We already answered that one right in the beginning. So Maverick, we did answer it, but I know like most of us said Mario All Stars, but I went with Sonic Jam for the Sega Genesis. And who was the one that said Kirby Collection? I think that was you, Okami.
I think I did.
Yeah, I'll have to check again. But yeah,
it was Okami, and Kirby was my second one, but it was the first one I enjoyed.
Yeah, Sonic Jam was Saturn. Yes, that was my first one. I've had Sonic Jam on Saturn. So the next question is from Destiny. Do you feel that some collections should have achievements that offer replay value, especially if you want to get everything done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think achievements are a good thing in general. Like they're like a little fun thing that you can kind of strive for if you wanted to.
Yes.
They're
They don't hurt
optional.
anybody.
Yeah. You do it if you want, but you don't have to. But I don't see why I don't see the point in leaving them out,
Exactly. Like have them and make sure that like you give people incentives to do the achievements. Don't just have achievements where it says just loaded up the game. Don't do that. Actually give you achievements that are worth going for.
Beat Alien Isolation without dying.
Oh, and no online achievements. Don't make it so that like, oh, you have to do this to get an online leaderboard or do online multiplayer. Don't do those. Please. Don't do those either. Because that's bad for preservation purposes, because if you want to get achievements and if the servers are shut down, you're basically shit out of luck when it comes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, I mean, there's some games that never originally had achievements, and then you don't really have to go out of your way to add them. I don't think, like, if the game is good on its own, rather the games, since we're doing compilations here,
Yep.
If the series is good on its own, then I really don't think it needs achievements by any stretch. However, I don't disagree with the rest of you either. It can add some incentive for the people who want them, and it might even teach you a little bit of something, like, if you are getting into a series for the first time with it, and you're looking over the achievements list, and you see something like, do this, that could actually be informative.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even consider doing that, but now maybe I should.
Yep. So basically, is we unanimously say yes to this one. So 2 more. Noble Voice asks, are compilations collections great for preservation or mindless nostalgia cash grabs? Both.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
let's be real. The companies know they're gonna make money on it.
Yeah.
It's the unfortunate. We live in a capitalistic society.
We do.
Mm-hmm.
And again, depending on how they port the game, it might not be great for preservation.
Yeah. No, I mean, some part of me does think, the devs want to bring this out to a wider audience, like the guys who were kids, or the people I should say, who were kids who originally grew up with the character, and then of course now they're still making that game, or they re-release it as a compilation, so that the parents now bestow that to their children, right? But is it 100% a cash grab? Yeah, talk to Square Enix. Look at how many times they've re-released certain games.
Yep.
Well, the game companies are businesses. Of course, they're after the money. But at the same time, we can be like, oh, I liked Spyro growing up, and now I'm old enough that I have my own kid, and I can buy the modern collection and show them what I liked so much about Spyro, as an example.
Yeah, exactly. Because I would
talking about torching Nasty Nork.
Exactly. Or if I want, like, when I eventually like to have kids in the future, potentially, I would like to get them into fighting games. I like to get them into Street Fighter. But
start with Street Fighter 1, not Street Fighter 2.
Yes, I'll have them start with Street Fighter 1. Street Fighter 1 is not a good game. Like, Street Fighter 2 was where things got really good, but...
We'll just have them start on the car.
If anything, I would actually have them start with a beat-em-up that they should play before Street Fighter 2, and that beat-em-up is called Final Fight.
Final Fight, yeah.
Great game. Which...
Why would you start with the final one?
Get Capcom beat-em-up bundle. I highly recommend that one. The last question: Do collections and compilations entice you to replay games in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise? And why do you think that is?
I mean, I feel like the Genesis collections, again, because I just never grew up with those consoles, so they're unique to me, you know? Like, that's an experience that I didn't get to have as a kid, and so now I get to have them as an adult, and I look at things a little differently now than I did then, so I appreciate, like, those kinds of compilations, you know?
Yep.
But then I also look back to something like, the Metroid Prime trilogy, right? That's a solid set of games that I was mostly an adult playing, and I can look back at those with like rose-tinted glasses and just feel like I'm at that age again to play them again, you know?
Yep. Azran?
I mean, I would say absolutely they do. And the reason being is that even if I've already played the series, I mean, a lot of times I'm getting into the series and learning the history of something that I haven't seen. But if I have played the series, or if I replay a collection after playing it for the first time, it's like, now I can look back with the lens of, here's how the series evolved. Because oftentimes, the compilation has multiple subsequent games in chronological order, and you can, take it back to the beginning and see, like, this is how these first few games started out. Like, Pikmin 1 and 2 released as a compilation at some point, and I got into the series with 3, and I had tried Pikmin 1 and 2 back on the GameCube. They didn't really stick with me at the time. I was way too young to wrap around an RTS. Mm-hmm. But now I can look back at them and be like, look at how far Pikmin has come and how it started, and even from 1 to 2, what the evolution was.
Yeah, that is definitely really good though. Okami?
I think for me it depends if it's. I think the major thing is it my first time playing this? I think is probably my definitive answer. Where even if it isn't my first time playing this, I still might go and try to do as much as I can, just because I'm the type of person that likes to do all the side quests and stuff just to especially if I'm really loving the game, just to prolong it as much as possible. And I mean, I guess yeah, it depends on my enjoyment of the game overall, and to if it's I guess, and then secondary, is it my first time or not experiencing this?
Oh yeah. Because for me, like, in regards to everything here, the bottom line for it all for me is when there are like a lot of games that I feel like if you could just add a couple more things to entice me to buy the game. But yeah, I wouldn't mind like just playing different games in general that have different challenges, different reasons to let me get the collection, like museums. You want to have like concept art, original names for certain characters, what the original plot was going to be like. Like, let's say, for example, in the Street Fighter collection, I'm going to go back to that again because they bring up a lot of stuff. Like, for example, they have like a history timeline from 87 up to like 2018 when the compilation came out. Street Fighter 1 was originally planned for the NES, but the port did not go far. And then you have like different concept art characters that were originally designed for Street Fighter 2 but that did not make the cut, or they reworked them into the characters that actually exist. So it's nice to see exactly just how things looked like. Plus, in the case of something like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga collection, you not only have concept arts, but basically you have museums like where you get to look at stills of the cartoons from the 87 series, 2003, 2012, and Rise. You get still images of each episode. They did it for all the episodes. They have ads for the games, or like ads that features any of those games. Though they had to block out some stuff that they couldn't use because of licensing issues. But otherwise, they did a great job with that. Having different incentives to be able to have the collection. And as that Alpha Line is asking, how much do you personally care about archival content and collections? Stuff like design docs, concept arts, promotional materials, old trailers, and development timelines, or the extra stuff like the anime episodes and Kirby or the Museum on the TMNT. It all goes hand in hand. Gives you an incentive to check out the collection. It actually adds even more to the value than just adding the games. So,
and in an age where layoffs are rampant, it's nice to get some appreciation for all the work that went into said games from the people who made them.
Exactly. Because you got to respect the people that make them. Like, without these people, who's going to make the games? The executives don't make games. They're just there to make money. You just want to make the games. So, yeah.
I'll admit I'm not somebody who usually looked at things like the extra art or like little video clips or vignettes or anything like that, like when there's compilations. But it does make me think about like how the original Smash Brothers, pick any version of the game that you want. Any of the trophies before they became trophy fighters in Ultimate Smash, weren't they just like little factoids and stuff? Like as you collected them in the game,
yeah.
So you could like get the Rob statue in the original Super Smash Brothers on the 64, and then it gave you a fact about it, which I'm more into the fact more so than something like the art or like a sketch or like a cell from the animation from the cartoon or whatever, right?
Yep.
Give me facts about the games, because that's like, I'm curious, like why is this trophy in this Smash Brothers game? Oh, it's because it's related via this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, like, because those bits of tidbits are actually something that makes me like and appreciate what they do regarding all these collections. Like, great value. Like, It's, if anything, like the fact, like even if the game's running well is a huge plus as well, what for preservation's sake. But just having the game available in some cases, like if you have it on like a Switch, or like if you have it on Steam, you can play it on the Steam Deck to take it with you anywhere, then that actually adds a lot to it. Like being able to take some of these games that otherwise were never portable, you can make them portable for Switch or Steam Deck. It makes it wild. It's great. But yeah, like that's pretty much everything with this topic. So,
I did think of one other thing that changes my experience slightly.
Yeah.
And that's I played Metroid Prime Trilogy on Wii U, and then we got the remaster on Switch. So I'd say if a game just does a visual touch-up and I want to quickly replay it and see what's changed visually to appreciate that, that's a case where I actually, on this copy for Switch, I turned it to casual mode so I could speed through things a little faster, even though when I first played it, it was just on the normal difficulty.
Yes. Well said. But yeah, but that's gonna do it. But before we sign off, ArcadeBear, where can we find you?
I'm mostly on Blue Sky and Instagram, although I don't really post very much on Instagram. And then you can mostly find me here on Twitch. I've been trying to get back into streaming after taking a bit of a break off and on and off and on again. Hopefully I'll have a regular schedule. And yeah, again, I play a lot of like retro games, but also a lot of current PC gaming as well.
Yep. And Azran, where can we find you?
If it's a social media platform I'm on, it's the name Azren127, but there's a bunch of those now, so I won't list them all off. Big place, though, is, of course, Spotify as well, because I've got 2 albums on there, and you can stream them. You don't have to buy them or anything, but it's a great night. It's instrumental music to get you through your day.
Yep. And Okami, where can we find you?
You can find me here on Twitch at OkamiHylia. I stream here. I try to do 3 to 5 streams a week, depending on health. Yep. So I try to do that. But you can find me on Twitter as well. I was just screaming about Digimon Con over there last night, so I apologize. That's just a bunch of Digimon tweets right now.
That's fair.
And you can find me over on Discord on OkamiHylia and YouTube as well.
Yeah. And you can find me on pretty much any type of social media platform as ShellshockPrime. And if you see the name ShellshockPrime, there's a good chance I'm on it. I stream a lot, usually Monday through Thursdays from 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, with the occasional Sunday streams, which sharing with Shellshock has been very consistent with Sundays. And we do have an episode next week, which next week is retro game hunting. And the guests for that are going to be Homecoming Hero, Rocks the Cat. We'll have Zach Pack and Yoshells as well. That's next week, same time, same place, which I'm looking forward to that. So, for OneOneTwo, who was here before, I have to thank them for being a part of the show. ArcadeBear, thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Azren127, thank you for being a part of the show.
My pleasure and yours.
And OkamiHylia, thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you. It was a wonderful time chatting with you guys. And just thank you to Shell for hosting another episode and for the invite, of course.
Yep, I'm glad to have you all on. I'm gonna roll the credits, but I'm going to deafen in just a moment. But before I do, I just want to say to everyone in chat, thanks to everybody that came through for the stream. Thanks to everybody that came through. Make sure to take care of yourselves. Be awesome. Stay awesome. Tell your loved ones you love them. Check up on them as always. Fight for lasting peace, and I'll see you guys next time. And again, thank you all for tuning in, and y'all have a great night, everybody. Take care.
Bye.